Nayla had always believed in building a life with both hands, one hand for dreams, the other for love. From the outside, her life looked like something out of a fairy tale. Her husband, Adil, was a man many admired, tall, polished, with a sharp mind for business and a smile that could charm even the most skeptical investor. They were often called the golden couple at social events, their pictures plastered across society pages, described with words like elegant, ideal, and inspiring. Their home, a stunning villa nestled in one of the city's most affluent neighborhoods, was always full of guests, laughter, and sophistication. Nayla had stood beside Adil from the early years of his rise, long before the awards, media coverage, and boardroom dominance. She brought more than just beauty to the marriage. An MBA graduate with a creative streak, she quietly helped streamline many of Adil's business operations. She wasn't loud about her involvement. She never needed to be. In boardrooms, she stayed respectfully silent. But at home, she was the mind that caught the cracks before they widened. She hosted fundraisers, managed staff, and ensured their public image remained untarnished. She never sought the limelight, but she was the reason it shone so steadily on him. Everyone around them envied their life. Women admired Nayla's poise and timeless grace. Men often remarked that Adil was lucky to have her. At events, she wore perfectly tailored gowns, her makeup always subtle, her jewelry elegant, nothing loud, nothing out of place. She had mastered the art of being the perfect partner. And yet, despite the magazine covers and the polished smiles, Nayla felt something beginning to shift. At first, it was easy to explain away. Adil was expanding into international markets. New ventures meant late nights, longer flights, and more stress. When he forgot dinner plans, she told herself it was exhaustion. When he stopped answering her calls promptly, she convinced herself he must be in a meeting. She tried not to let the silence sting, tried to believe that he still held her in the same regard he always had. But doubts, once seated, rarely stay buried. The first real crack appeared one evening when Adil returned from a trip to Dubai. He seemed preoccupied, irritable. Nayla had prepared his favorite meal, even worn the midnight blue sari he once said made her look like a dream. But he barely glanced at her. "I'm tired," he said, dismissing her gentle kiss and heading straight to the guest bedroom to sleep. That night, Nayla lay awake in their empty bed, staring at the ceiling, telling herself it was just fatigue. But then there were more signs. A phone he suddenly kept password-locked, though he never used to. Business trips that didn't add up, flight times that didn't match his explanations. Once, she found a hotel receipt in his blazer pocket for a weekend he claimed to be at a conference in Lahore. The hotel was in Karachi. She didn't confront him immediately. Instead, she folded the receipt carefully and placed it in her drawer. A quiet warning to herself. Something was wrong. He started turning his face away from her in bed, stopped asking about her day. The warmth between them turned mechanical. At parties, his hand no longer lingered at the small of her back. He no longer noticed when she changed her hair or wore a new perfume. And while he still played the role of the attentive husband in public, the intimacy that once filled their private moments had become a void. Even the staff noticed. The housekeeper, Gala Zubaida, once whispered, "Sap Thikhai, Baji," when she found Nayla sitting alone in the garden with tears brimming silently in her eyes. Nayla still didn't break. She told herself that all marriages have phases. That love, like seasons, sometimes cools before blooming again. But deep inside, a quiet fear began to grow, one she wasn't ready to name just yet. It happened on a quiet Tuesday evening, the kind of night where the house was wrapped in soft silence, and the hum of the air conditioner was the only background noise. Nayla had just finished watering the plants in the sunroom and was about to head upstairs when she heard Adil's voice from his home office. The door was slightly ajar, and she paused, not to eavesdrop, but out of instinct. There was something in his tone, something playful and tender, that she hadn't heard directed toward her in months. "Missed you," he said, laughing softly. "I can't wait to see you again, John. Don't wear anything too fancy. You look best when you're just you." Nayla froze. Her heart didn't race, it stopped. For a moment, She couldn't even blink. Adil's voice continued, muffled slightly as he paced the room, but the words still landed like knives. "No, she suspects nothing," he said casually. "She still thinks I'm working late. Poor thing's too polite to ask questions." Then came the name, Mahira. A pretty name. One Nayla had never heard from his lips before, but now it was carved into her memory like a scar. She stepped back, careful not to let the floor creak, and returned to their bedroom, locking the door behind her. She sat down on the edge of the bed and stared into the mirror. Her reflection looked the same as it had that morning, graceful, composed, but everything behind her eyes had changed. For days, Nayla didn't say a word. Not to Adil. Not to her best friend. Not even to herself. It was as if admitting it out loud would make it more real. But silence didn't mean inaction. Nayla switched into a mode she hadn't used in years, the strategist, the observer. She began noticing patterns. Adil's sudden interest in fitness, the cologne he wore that wasn't in their collection, the expensive gifts she never saw but found receipts for tucked away in his coat pockets. When he said he had to fly to Islamabad for back-to-back meetings, she checked his itinerary. It didn't match. She hired a discreet private investigator, an old contact from her days in business school who now specialized in corporate surveillance. It took less than a week for him to return with photos. Mahira was stunning, tall, slim, with flawless skin and bold eyes. She looked like she belonged in fashion magazines, not boardrooms, yet that's exactly where she was. Mahira was not some fleeting affair. She was an ambitious consultant, 10 years younger than Nayla, who had recently joined one of the firms Adil collaborated with. The photos showed them hand in hand outside a luxury hotel, dining at rooftop restaurants, laughing as if they shared an entire world Nayla had never been invited to. What hurt more than the betrayal was the realization that this hadn't just happened. It had been unfolding quietly for months, maybe years, like a creeping illness. Mahira wasn't just a distraction. She was being positioned to replace Nayla, both emotionally and publicly. The signs were all there in hindsight. The slow exclusion from business meetings. The subtle digs at her ideas. The shifting tone in his voice whenever he spoke to her. Less respect, more indifference. Still, Nayla didn't cry in front of anyone. She didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, she began documenting everything. She scanned the hotel receipts, saved the investigators' reports, and printed screenshots of suspicious messages she discreetly forwarded to herself from his synced iPad. Every piece of evidence went into a locked file on her computer, and a copy on a USB drive she kept hidden behind a framed photo of their wedding. She also began journaling, pages filled with details, dates, feelings, facts. Not for revenge. Not yet. But because a storm was coming, and she needed to be prepared. Nayla had always believed in love, but now she was learning the value of silence, strategy, and survival. Adil didn't know it yet, but the woman he thought he was discarding had just started rewriting the ending to their story. The invitations arrived in thick ivory envelopes, embossed with gold and sealed with the emblem of Adil's company. It was the annual charity gala, one of the city's most glamorous events, attended by industrialists, politicians, celebrities, and elite donors. Nayla had been part of its planning every year since Adil launched it. She'd curated themes, selected the guest list, and ensured that every detail, from the floral arrangements to the wine pairings, was executed flawlessly. Her presence wasn't just expected, it was tradition. So when Adil mentioned the event offhandedly over breakfast, Nayla naturally assumed she would be attending. She began mentally assembling her outfit, thinking of wearing the emerald silk gown Adil once said made her look like royalty. But as she reached for her planner to block the date, he looked up from his phone and said, "Don't worry about this year's gala. It's strictly professional. No need for you to attend." Nayla blinked, confused. "I always go. I've helped plan it." Adil didn't look up. "Things are different this year. It's more of a corporate networking night. Not really for spouses." He didn't wait for a response, just stood up, buttoned his jacket, and left the room, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Nayla sat in silence, her hands frozen mid-motion. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone.
cold,
final, like she was a guest in her own life. But Nayla had not spent years learning grace and strength to now let herself be dismissed. She said nothing to him, made no protest. Instead, she contacted a designer friend and had a custom gown made, deep sapphire blue with a delicate cape that shimmered under light. Elegant, powerful. She reserved her own car, confirmed her name on the guest list, and made sure to arrive fashionably late. The ballroom was breathtaking, tall chandeliers, soft music from a live quartet, and hundreds of glittering guests mingling over champagne. Nayla walked in with poise, shoulders back, smile calm. People turned to look, recognizing her instantly. Many greeted her, clearly unaware of any trouble behind the scenes. She kept her composure, nodding graciously, her eyes subtly scanning the crowd. Then it happened. The grand entrance. The music shifted. Cameras flashed. Adil walked in through the arched doors, dressed in a black tuxedo, exuding charm. And beside him, Mahira. She was radiant in a red velvet gown, her arm looped confidently through Adil's. They paused just inside the ballroom, the photographers swarming them, and then came the moment that shattered everything. "This is my wife," Adil announced with a polished smile, turning to Mahira and placing a hand on the small of her back. "Isn't she breathtaking?" Nayla's breath caught in her throat. The air seemed to vanish from the room. A few guests who knew Nayla turned sharply toward her, eyes wide with confusion. Others whispered behind flutes of champagne. A couple of women clutched their pearls, glancing from Nayla to the pair now basking in media attention. Nayla stood motionless near the side of the room, her face unreadable, but her heart was in chaos. Her hands trembled slightly, hidden within the folds of her gown. She felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Not just betrayal, this was erasure. Adil hadn't just replaced her in private. He had publicly rewritten their history, erased her presence, and crowned another in her place. Mahira smiled brightly, playing her role perfectly. Cameras captured every moment, and Adil posed like a man proud of his prize. People began murmuring. Wasn't Nayla his wife? Did they divorce? Who is the new woman? Did Nayla know? The whispers felt like shards against Nayla's skin, but she didn't flinch. She refused to give them the satisfaction. She held her chin high, smiled softly, and walked further into the crowd, not away. Let them whisper. She was not done yet. After the night of the gala, Nayla vanished. Not into shadows, but into silence. No press statements, no public confrontations, no tearful interviews. Just absence. One moment, she was a fixture of the elite social circle, and the next, her name became a question hanging in every whispered conversation. Where had she gone? Had she suffered a breakdown? Had Adil divorced her quietly? Was she in rehab? Abroad? The tabloids buzzed with speculation, crafting headlines from thin air. The fall of Nayla Khan? Discarded wife or silent phoenix? Some painted her as the heartbroken woman nursing invisible wounds. Others claimed she had fled to Europe with a secret lover. All of them were wrong. Nayla hadn't disappeared. She had simply retreated, to heal, to rebuild, and to plan. She sold her wedding ring and used the money to rent a small private apartment on the edge of the city, far from the circles she once entertained. It wasn't grand, but it was hers, untouched by betrayal. The first thing she did was start therapy. At first, it felt strange, even unnecessary. She had always been composed, strong. But with time, those weekly sessions helped her sift through the hurt, anger, humiliation, layer by layer. She didn't want to carry bitterness. She wanted clarity. Not revenge driven by rage, but a return to power, her way. She enrolled in yoga and began daily walks. She slept better, ate better, cried less, laughed even. She cut her long hair, a symbolic act that felt like shedding an old skin. Her wardrobe evolved too, less silk and chiffon, more clean cuts and bold colors. Every choice now was intentional. Then came the idea. It started with an old trunk in her mother's home, Inside were sketches, fabric swatches, and dusty portfolios. Her mother, a once promising fashion designer, had given up her dreams for family. Nayla had always admired her designs, minimal, powerful, elegant. She began recreating them. Late into the night, Nayla studied market trends, design software, and supply chains. She reached out to former acquaintances in the textile world, this time not as someone's wife, but as a potential collaborator. She didn't flash her last name. She pitched with quiet confidence and let her work speak. Some doors slammed shut. Others creaked open. A few, especially women-run firms, welcomed her with cautious optimism. Within 6 months, she quietly launched her brand, Nayla Noor, a boutique fashion label inspired by grace, rebirth, and understated strength. Her first collection dropped anonymously online, without ads, using only word of mouth and subtle influencer seeding. It sold out within days. Soon, blogs began asking, "Who is the woman behind Nayla Noor?" She agreed to one interview, under her own terms. No questions about her marriage, only her work. The feature was titled, "From Silence to Substance, the woman behind the brand everyone's talking about." Photos of her circulated, hair shorter, gaze stronger, her smile still elegant but tinged with something deeper. Not sadness. Power. Former socialites who once gossiped about her now watched in awe as fashion editors praised her designs. She began attending small events again, not as Adil's wife, but as a rising entrepreneur. She stood alone in rooms where she once stood by someone else's side, and this time, people leaned in when she spoke. Adil's name was never mentioned. Mahira's scandalous red gown at the gala was now forgotten. But Nayla? She was becoming a symbol of silent resilience and quiet fire. She wasn't back in the spotlight. She had become the spotlight. Exactly 1 year to the day, the charity gala returned, same grand venue, same golden invitations, but an entirely different energy for one woman. This time, the invitation didn't come from Adil's office. It came from the gala's organizing committee itself. In the past year, Nayla had quietly become a known name in philanthropic circles, not because she flaunted wealth, but because she funded real impact. Women's literacy programs, mental health workshops, and small grants to single mothers trying to rebuild their lives. She signed every check with care, asked for no publicity, and yet, word had spread. People began to admire her not for who she once was, but for who she had become. The committee chairperson, an influential businesswoman, sent her a personal message. "We would be honored to have you as our guest this year, Ms. Nayla Noor." Nayla paused when she read it. She looked at the date. A slow smile crept across her face. She didn't hesitate. The preparations were unlike the years before, not because of anxiety, but purpose. She chose the design for her gown herself, a flowing, ivory and silver creation from her own label, with hand-embroidered details and a long train that whispered across the floor like poetry. Her hair, now in soft waves, framed her glowing face, and her makeup was soft yet defined, like a woman who had faced the fire and come out polished, not burned. She arrived alone, stepping out of a sleek black car. As she ascended the marble stairs, camera flashes erupted. Photographers, who had once ignored her for newer faces, now rushed to get her angle. "Ms. Noor, over here. Stunning as always." "Who are you wearing?" someone shouted, and Nayla turned slightly, the corners of her lips lifting into a graceful smile. "My own label," she replied. Just 3 words, but they struck like thunder. Inside the ballroom, conversations paused. Heads turned. Murmurs spread. The same people who whispered about her a year ago now whispered in awe. She glided across the floor, completely at ease, greeting the committee members and respected guests with warmth and dignity. Her presence wasn't loud, but it commanded the room. Then the inevitable happened. Adil walked in, Mahira on his arm again, wearing a red gown that looked intentionally provocative, but somehow outdated. Their smiles faltered the moment they saw her. Adil blinked, as if unsure if it was really Nayla standing there, elevated, composed, radiant. Mahira's lips tightened, her posture stiffening. The photographers didn't rush to them this time. The spotlight had shifted. The attention no longer orbited around their curated image. It had found something real, someone real. Adil tried to keep his composure, but his eyes betrayed him. There was confusion, envy, perhaps even regret. He had expected Nayla to disappear, or, at best, become someone forgettable. Instead, she had risen, not as an accessory to a powerful man, but as a powerful woman in her own right. Mahira glanced at the cameras turning away from her and toward Nayla, her grip on Adil's arm tightening. She whispered something in his ear, but he wasn't listening. His gaze was still fixed on the woman he once dismissed, now untouchable, undeniable. Nayla didn't go near them. She didn't need to. She simply existed, gracefully, unapologetically, and that was enough to make the entire room feel her presence. She hadn't just returned. She had arrived. As the evening unfolded, the atmosphere inside the grand ballroom shifted palpably, like a subtle current that no one could ignore. The power dynamics had changed, quietly but unmistakably. Nayla found herself seated at the VIP table, a place she hadn't occupied before, surrounded by some of the city's most influential figures. CEOs, philanthropists, industry leaders, all leaning in, eager to hear her thoughts, share ideas, and celebrate her presence. It was a seat of honor, earned not through connections or marriage, but through merit, vision, and undeniable grace. Across the room, Mahira was conspicuously absent from the elite seating arrangements. She lingered on the fringes, mingling with Adil's acquaintances, but the sparkle she once had seemed to dull in the shadow of Nayla's rising star. Conversations around her felt forced, smiles strained, invitations scarce. Adil sat at a nearby table, but was noticeably isolated. Former friends who once toasted to his success now kept their distance, their eyes often drifting toward Nayla's table with a mix of admiration and disbelief. The man who had introduced Mahira as his wife barely spoke, nursing a drink and watching as the woman he discarded commanded the room with effortless poise. Fashion editors buzzed around Nayla like bees drawn to a rare flower. They wanted interviews, questions about her collection, her inspirations, her future plans. Businesswomen approached her with genuine interest, discussing potential collaborations and philanthropic ventures. The energy surrounding Nayla was electric, a stark contrast to the cold reception Adil and Mahira received. One daring reporter finally found the courage to ask the question everyone was thinking. "Ms. Noor, after everything you've been through, what kept you going?" Nayla smiled, a serene and knowing smile that held stories of pain and perseverance. "Being underestimated," she said softly, "is life's greatest advantage. When people don't expect much from you, you have the freedom to surprise them and yourself." Her words rippled through the crowd, inspiring nods and murmurs of agreement. It wasn't just a comeback story, it was a lesson in resilience and quiet strength. Not everyone accepted this shift gracefully. Mahira, feeling the sting of being overshadowed, attempted to disrupt the harmony. At one point, she approached the stage during a break, loudly complaining to the organizers about Nayla stealing the show and accused her of riding on Adil's coattails. Her voice cracked with frustration, drawing attention. But the room's response was swift and unmistakable. A senior committee member gently but firmly escorted Mahira away, reminding her that the event celebrated genuine impact and integrity. Guests exchanged disapproving glances, their loyalties clearly with Nayla. Mahira's attempted scene fizzled out quickly, her words lost amid the applause that followed Nayla's poised acceptance of a philanthropic award. The crowd cheered, not for drama, but for triumph born of grace and grit. As the evening drew to a close, Nayla's presence remained the defining moment. The power shift was complete, not with loud confrontation, but with undeniable elegance and strength that left an indelible mark on everyone present. Backstage, away from the shimmering lights and the applause echoing through the grand hall, the air was thick with tension. Nayla was quietly gathering her things when she felt a presence behind her. She turned slowly to see Adil standing there, his expression a mixture of disbelief, regret, and something deeper. Vulnerability she had never witnessed before. He looked disheveled, his usually sharp suit rumpled, tie loosened, and eyes darting as if searching for words. "Nayla," he began, his voice shaky, I didn't expect to see you like this. You've changed, no, you've transformed. Everyone's talking about you." Nayla met his gaze steadily, neither angry nor soft. "I had to," she replied quietly. "For myself." Adil took a hesitant step closer. "I'm sorry."
For everything.
"I never wanted to hurt you. I was wrong. Mahira, it meant nothing compared to what we had." She raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Did you ever stop to wonder what it meant to me?" Her voice was calm, but firm. "You threw me away for shine and superficial thrills. But I was always the diamond, hidden yes, but real. You just chose not to see." The words hit him like a sudden gust of cold wind. Adil opened his mouth, trying to reply, but the conviction in her voice silenced him. For once, the confident man who controlled rooms and negotiations was speechless. Just then, Mahira, who had been lingering near the doorway, caught the tail end of their conversation. Her face twisted in fury, eyes narrowing. She stormed forward, interrupting. "Enough, Nayla. You think you're better than me? You're just bitter because you lost." Nayla turned to her with a steady stare. "This isn't bitterness. It's truth. Something you don't seem to understand." Mahira's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as a few backstage crew members watched the scene unfold. Without another word, she turned on her heel and left, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Adil watched her retreat, then looked back at Nayla with a mixture of shame and awe. "How did you do it? How did you become this woman?" Nayla's smile was small but genuine. "By realizing that no one else's opinion defines my worth. And by refusing to settle for less than I deserve." He swallowed hard, the weight of his mistakes settling heavily on his shoulders. The man who once controlled every narrative found himself a mere spectator to Nayla's resurgence, a woman who had not only reclaimed her life, but had surpassed him in every way. As the sound of distant applause filtered through the walls, Nayla took a deep breath and turned away, stepping back into the light that was hers now. Adil was left alone in the shadows, humbled and haunted by the brilliance of the woman he had discarded. As the charity gala reached its peak, the event's host approached Nayla with a surprising invitation. Would she deliver a short speech on women empowerment? The request was met with enthusiastic applause from the audience, eager to hear from the woman whose transformation had captivated everyone. Nayla stepped onto the stage with quiet confidence. The spotlight found her, but instead of shying away, she embraced it. She looked out over the crowd, faces filled with respect, curiosity, and admiration, and took a steady breath before speaking. "Good evening," she began, her voice clear and resonant. "Tonight, I stand before you not just as a woman who has faced betrayal, but as someone who has chosen to transform that pain into power. Betrayal can shake the foundation of our lives. It can leave us questioning our worth and our strength. But it does not have to define us." She paused, letting the words sink in. Rebuilding isn't easy. It takes courage to rise from the ashes, to find yourself again when the world tries to write your story without you. But rise we must. Reclaim what is rightfully ours, our dignity, our dreams, our futures. Her eyes sparkled with determination. "To every woman who has been underestimated, dismissed, or cast aside, I see you. Your worth is not measured by anyone else's validation. It is inherent, unshakable, and infinite." The audience erupted in applause, some standing, others wiping away tears. But Nayla's speech was more than inspiration. It was a call to action wrapped in grace. By the next morning, clips of her speech flooded social media. Headlines read, "Nayla Noor's empowering words ignite a movement," and "the speech that reminded women everywhere of their power." The phrase "rebuild,
Rise.
reclaim" became a rallying cry, trending in multiple countries. Her words spread far beyond the gala's walls. Women shared the video in support groups, schools, and workplaces. Influencers and celebrities echoed her message, tagging Nayla in heartfelt posts. The hashtag #RebuildRiseReclaim trended for weeks. International organizations took notice. Invitations poured in for Nayla to speak at conferences in London, New York, and Dubai. She was featured in global magazines, her story a beacon of hope for countless women navigating heartbreak and betrayal. Meanwhile, Mahira found herself at the opposite end of the spotlight. Social media users mocked her over-the-top red gowns and her failed attempts to regain attention at the gala. Memes circulated, poking fun at her faded glamour and contrast to Nayla's genuine elegance. The digital world had made a clear choice. Despite the buzz, Nayla remained grounded. She used her newfound platform to launch initiatives supporting women's education and emotional wellness. She partnered with NGOs, mentoring young women to embrace their power. Her speech wasn't just words, it was the beginning of a movement. Adil watched from afar as the woman he once cast aside became a global symbol of resilience and empowerment. And though he never admitted it aloud, he knew the world was witnessing the rise of a force far greater than anything he had ever controlled. In the months that followed Nayla's rise, the tides of fate began to turn sharply against Adil. The man once hailed as an unstoppable business titan found himself grappling with a series of setbacks that shook the very foundation of his empire. It started quietly. A whistleblower within one of Adil's major partner firms leaked documents revealing financial discrepancies linked to projects overseen by Mahira. The allegations were serious: misuse of funds, inflated invoices, and suspicious contracts. The scandal quickly snowballed, dragging Mahira's reputation through the mud. Once the golden accessory to Adil's power, she now became a liability. The very people who once fawned over her began distancing themselves, and within weeks, Mahira made a public announcement of her departure from Adil's circle, citing irreconcilable differences and a desire to pursue her own ventures elsewhere. Her exit was a blow, but it wasn't the end of Adil's troubles. Sponsors who had invested millions began pulling out, wary of being associated with the growing controversy. Contracts were terminated, shares tumbled, and board members questioned his leadership. The charisma that once commanded loyalty now seemed overshadowed by scandal and instability. Meanwhile, Nayla's world was expanding rapidly but gracefully. Her fashion brand, Nayla Noor, had blossomed from a humble boutique into a global luxury label synonymous with elegance and empowerment. The meticulous craftsmanship and meaningful storytelling behind every collection resonated deeply with consumers worldwide. Flagship stores opened in Paris, Milan, and Tokyo. Her designs graced red carpets and high-profile galas, making her a household name in fashion. Business leaders who once doubted her now sought her out, eager to align with her vision and values. In a surprising twist of fate, the very international firm that had once been a major backer of Adil's ventures approached Nayla with a lucrative partnership proposal. They saw in her not only a business opportunity, but a chance to associate with a woman whose brand embodied integrity, resilience, and innovation. The negotiations were swift and successful, further cementing her place at the pinnacle of the industry. One crisp evening, as the city buzzed beneath the glow of neon lights, Adil found himself alone in his sprawling penthouse. The walls, once echoing with laughter and celebration, now felt cold and hollow. On the massive screen of his living room, a commercial played repeatedly. A soaring melody underscored scenes of elegant models wearing Nayla Noor's latest collection. The camera finally panned to a breathtaking billboard in Times Square, illuminated against the night sky. Nayla's radiant face, eyes sparkling with confidence and grace, her tagline boldly declaring, "Rebuild.
Rise.
Reclaim." Adil watched, frozen. The woman he had tried to erase was now everywhere, larger than life, untouchable, and admired by millions. The realization settled deep within him. The empire he had built on fragile ground was crumbling, while Nayla's legacy was just beginning. He sank into the leather chair, the weight of his mistakes pressing down. Outside, the city pulsed with life, oblivious to his defeat. But inside, the silence was deafening. That night, Adil was left alone, not just in his penthouse, but in a world that no longer had a place for him. And as Nayla's image shone brightly on screens around the globe, it was clear that karma had come knocking, and she had answered with a brilliance that no darkness could dim. Years had passed since the night Nayla was humiliated at the charity gala, the night that had seemed like the end of everything but was, in truth, the beginning of her transformation. Now, seated in the quiet corner of her stylish yet cozy penthouse, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. The sunlight filtered softly through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow over the sleek furniture and the shelves lined with awards, books, and photographs, memories of a life rebuilt from the ashes. Nayla thought about the journey that had brought her here. The heartbreak, the silent resilience, the long nights filled with doubt, and the steady climb back to her power. It hadn't been easy. There were moments she questioned herself, moments when the weight of betrayal threatened to overwhelm her. But those moments had been brief, fleeting shadows compared to the light she now carried. Her business, Nayla Noor, was no longer just a label. It was a symbol of strength, grace, and authenticity. It had grown into a global luxury brand, celebrated for its thoughtful designs and its commitment to empowering women. More importantly, Nayla had cultivated genuine friendships, people who loved her for who she was, not for her status or connections. These friends brought laughter, support, and a sense of belonging that no amount of success could replace. But success alone wasn't enough. Nayla knew that many women faced battles similar to hers, often in silence and solitude. Driven by a deep sense of purpose, she established a foundation dedicated to supporting women who had experienced emotional abuse, infidelity, or heartbreak. The foundation provided counseling, legal aid, vocational training, and a safe space for healing. It became a sanctuary for many, a place where stories were shared and strength was nurtured. The work filled Nayla with a profound sense of fulfillment. She traveled frequently, attending conferences and workshops, speaking openly about her experiences, and advocating for emotional health and empowerment. Every face she saw in those rooms, every story she heard, reinforced her belief that the darkest nights often gave birth to the brightest lights. On one such trip, she met someone new, not introduced with fanfare or whispered rumors, but simply encountered as a fellow traveler on the path of life. Their conversations were easy, filled with curiosity and mutual respect. There was no rush, no pressure. Just the quiet unfolding of a new chapter, one filled with potential and hope. Nayla didn't label this person as a love interest or a rebound. Instead, she embraced the moment for what it was, a fresh beginning, a reminder that life stories are written one page at a time. As she sat by the window that evening, the city lights twinkling below, Nayla smiled softly to herself. She whispered, almost as if sharing a secret with the night, "Some lights shine brighter after the darkest nights." And in that simple truth, she found peace.